Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar about making exhibitions at AMNH with Lauri Halderman. We are going to take a few more minutes to let people join the webinar, and we will get started in just about one more minute. There's a lot of people coming in now, which is lovely to see on this Friday. And I think we're going to give it maybe about, what do we say, 30 more seconds, and we'll go ahead and we'll kick it off because I know everybody's got busy schedules. Okay, what do we say, Lauri? You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, great. So I just want to say hello to everybody and welcome. Thank you very much for joining us here today. I'm Susan Pars. I'm the Director of Operations for Global Business Development here at AMNH. And I wanted to welcome you all to the second webinar in our Content Development and Engagement at AMNH series, which is hosted by Global Business Development. So first off, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who was able to join for our first webinar with Carol Tang. It was a great success. And if for some reason you missed that session, there is a recording available. We are going to have it on our website soon. But if you want it in the meantime, please reach out to us and we're happy to shoot you a link for that. So let's get stuff rolling. So it is my pleasure to introduce today's guest, Lauri Halderman, who is the Senior Vice President for Exhibition at the American Museum of Natural History. Lauri leads an incredibly talented team who is incredibly diverse, and they develop amazing and inspiring exhibitions that are both permanent and temporary travelings. They're experts in working with the museum scientists to bring public-facing experiences that make audiences learn, wonder, and sometimes laugh and answer questions, and hopefully are launching a future generation of scientists. And as you can imagine, this is an incredibly complex process. So I'm sure over the course of the next few minutes, there's going to be a lot of questions that you all have. So we ask you to please use the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. So with that, and without any further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Lauri.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. I am going to give you a sense of the team of us here at the museum who make the exhibitions. I'll take you through the process as quickly as I can and pass along even a few tips that have helped us. So a new exhibition starts with a great idea. That's not always as easy as it seems to find the great idea, although we get lots of ideas all year long. People email us, water cooler conversations. But when we're going to embark on a major new temporary exhibition, we want to have a pretty robust pool of ideas to draw on to match the moment with the idea that seems just right. How we do that? Well, we're lucky that we have an incredible team of scientists in the museum, and we like to get them together in what we call a science topics party. I forgot to bring my camera. It looks a little bit like this, but with scientists. We incentivize people to come. I think we didn't have olives, but everything else here rings true. And it's a really fun evening. Science, also some of us exhibition, education, our colleagues in global business development, public programs, everybody comes. We give out a lot of Post-it notes and pens. And before you know it, we have more than 200 ideas. We might use these for the next big exhibition, or we might use them for something smaller. We even gather up ideas for new kinds of public programs because it's great to have everybody in one place thinking together. So once we take all of these illegible handwriting Post-it notes and transcribe them, a couple teams now go through the 200 odd suggestions. And both of those of us in exhibition and our colleagues in science who run the Education and Exhibition Committee use a rubric to try to figure out what feels right. And once we have a topic, we have a handful, we have maybe 20 or 10, and we bring them into this group, what we call incubation. This is, I think, a really helpful process that we've evolved over the years. And these are all the teams that have usually one person at the table. And each of us is going to weigh in on these topics from the perspective of our own team. So, we wouldn't expect somebody in exhibition to say, but I don't know that you'll be able to raise funds for that, or somebody in membership to say, but how are you going to build that? Each of us is steering in our own lane and voting pretty much low, medium, or high as to how any given topic looks from our own perspective. And so out of that, let's imagine the topic was sharks. Sharks actually is an exhibition that went through this process, and we created the exhibition. So we develop internally these what we call votes of confidence. And it's easy to just use these stoplight colors. So green, yellow, red. And I would say the red for our colleagues in government relations was because there wasn't enough time and it was unlikely to find federal funding for an exhibition on sharks. We also draw on our expertise of our global business development colleagues to look at the competitive landscape. It's one thing to have a great idea, but if there's three other major exhibitions traveling on that same topic, might not be the right moment. And then we also turn to the public, and we really want to know how interested are they in a topic like sharks. We describe it in, 3 or 4 sentences. We ask if they'd bring a child. And at the end, we totaled up those numbers, and I blanked out all the other topics here because honestly, I'm not going to tell you everything, but we weigh that up against other topics that we've evaluated recently. And you can see here that sharks didn't come out absolutely on top, but it was a very strong contender. And on the strength of that, we sometimes go a little deeper into subtopics, more detail about what each team thinks, but we eventually decide sharks is going to be it. And now it's over to exhibition. So I wanted to give you a sense of who we are. And of course, throughout this process, we're working institutionally with our scientists, with our colleagues in business development, since the exhibition will travel, with our colleagues in education. But let me give you a sense of who's doing the work in exhibition. We have an interpretation team that's doing research and writing. We have the writers that are writing the exhibitions. I think they have a good sense of how to write a show. We have graphic designers. They are working very closely, of course, with the writers to convert all of those good words and ideas about images and graphics into graphic panels. Our 3D design team is, of course, doing all the 3D elements of the show, designing them. Our digital media team is designing and producing all of the passive and interactive digital media in these exhibitions. Production, not everybody can make a Triceratops in-house, but we're lucky that we can. We have a really talented production team that makes models. We have a live animal team. We don't have live animals in every exhibition, but when we do, our live animal team is making recommendations and doing the live animal care. Project management, of course, is keeping the trains running on time and helping us not go over budget. We also have a permanent hall strategy expert who's looking at how our visitors are behaving and learning in our permanent halls. We have an exhibition maintenance team of 2, very busy team. Yes, they really are vacuuming the whale there. Some guys have all the fun. And we have a couple of us in administration who are trying to steer the ship. So all of us are the internal exhibition team that's now going to shepherd this project. Let's look at sharks throughout the process. We start with what we call a kickoff meeting, not usually involving a lot of people in flames. Looks a little more like this. These are our 2 curators for sharks, an ichthyologist and a paleontologist. And we're sitting around a table like this with them, understanding what do they see as the big opportunities? What do they want to emphasize from a content, from a science standpoint? Do they have thoughts about specimens? All their big ideas, and also I'll look at the schedule from their standpoint. So they really emphasized diversity and evolution as the ideas that they wanted to bring out. And we move into conceptual design thinking, okay, how might we develop those 2 topics? And we also bring up some other ideas that we've been thinking about. Everybody thinks sharks are so dangerous, but really they're so endangered. We're much more dangerous to them. How will we bring people into the story? What about conservation? So we have various different ideas how we might really lead the design of the show at this moment. And as we move into schematic design, that's because we've chosen a direction. So the big idea at that moment, at that point, was we're going to have what we called a dynamic parade. We're going to really showcase the evolution and diversity with all of these shark models. But in order to add motion and liveliness to this parade, we're going to integrate media. That's those round white circles you see at the bottom. So we take that idea, we ask our 3D designers to lay that out, how it would fit into our gallery. This is our gallery 3. On the other side, we have a big media installation. We think down the center, we can really start looking at those topics of sharks and us. So now we really have a direction. And that's really our 3D team. But of course, all of our teams are working at this point. Researchers and writers are starting to think about how to organize the content. The graphics team is sketching. That's our photo researcher, Jose. He's getting to work. And our model makers are starting to show us what we think they could do. As we move into design development, well, this is where we really come up with all of the ideas that are going to populate the show. We're organizing into sections, integrating models that we have with new models we'll build, looking at fossils and specimens. Our digital team is looking at some cool new ideas for interactives. By the way, this all gets interrupted by COVID, so things that were going to be hands-on are all turning into hands-off. That's why we're looking at ultrasound. And of course, that Be a Shark is pretty fun down at the bottom. As we think about people empathizing with sharks, we think, well, maybe being a shark would be a way to empathize. We also build a full-scale model at this point. That's a little proof of concept for us, but it also helps us present the look and feel of the exhibition to our senior administration. And our business development team takes it to conferences where some of you might have seen a prospective exhibition that looks interesting. Now we're going to move into final design and prototyping phases. Every element of the show gets drawn up by our 3D team. That's because we don't fabricate furniture, railings, things like that. We're going to bid those out. So that's a big set of bid package that's getting drawn up. And all of our other teams are bringing prototype ideas out into our studio. We are looking at digital prototypes, hands-on interactives. And given that this COVID moment is giving us hands-off interactives, we are coming up with some new strategies there, some of which were less successful than we might hoped. Once the show traveled to other venues, our global business team helped us redesign those into touchscreens now that we were safely out of the COVID dangers. Meanwhile, as we move into fabrication, outside fabricator is building things, but our upstairs preparator team of model makers are hard at work building sharks, large, small, living, extinct, every kind of shark you can imagine, including the mother of all shark models, the Megalodon, which was a huge effort just in and of itself, but a pretty cool model, I think. Meanwhile, final text is being created. Text and graphics are going back and forth every day. I like this panel down at the bottom where there's notes written all over it. Can we cut this? Can we move this? Can we add? Can we subtract? That's what this process looks like. And then eventually it gets down to proofreading, which we do pretty carefully. We hate to find those typos at the last minute. And then finally, as all the pieces are coming together, we get to see them set up in the gallery. I know you all know what installation looks like, but it's kind of fun to see the Megalodon, right? By the way, if we built the whole thing, it would have taken up the whole gallery. So we had to cut it short there. That's pretty much the opening moment. But of course, opening is not the end of the process. Now we move into evaluation. We do a lot of that work ourselves. So we're looking at simple things like timing and tracking. How long do visitors stay? Where do they go? We always focus on a couple exhibits that we want to know more about in particular. And of course, we're looking at the big ideas. Did visitors take away the ideas that we wanted them to? Happily, in the case of sharks, they pretty much did. Oh, sometimes we get an award. That's always nice. Happy moment. And another happy moment is to gather together in the gallery. All of us still safely masked at that moment for a group portrait. So that's our process. But, you know, for those of you who make exhibitions, that's probably pretty familiar process. So I thought I'd just conclude with a couple ideas about like, so what makes anything that we do here different? What are the ideas that we stick to try to make the exhibitions we do? So one thing I think is to try to to start at that back to the beginning is choosing the right topic for the moment. And everybody has different ideas what the right topic might be. Some topics just aren't right for the time. Some topics maybe aren't right at all. I know that whoever recommended wood as the big topic in our museum was well intentioned, but no matter how I tried to envision the poster that would get everybody to come to the wood blockbuster, I personally just couldn't see it. So choose carefully, especially in these times where it's really important to all of us to have visitors come to our museums. We're really fortunate that we have a great scientific staff internally, and I think one of the things we pride ourselves on is trying to get the content right. So our curators are here in the building with us, and we're going back and forth all the time. We might be over in their offices, comparing notes on content, or they might be coming over here to look at some mock-ups, especially as we get up to our model makers who are starting to mock up things full size. Um, we're building extinct animals that no one's ever seen. We really need to collaborate with our scientists to understand their best take and our best take together on what some of these models should really look like. But it's not just science, right? It's art and science. And I think one of the things we've learned is that if we want people to care about the natural world, it really helps to make it beautiful or exciting or unusual or engaging. And that might come from any different way of creating an exhibit. Here, it might be that the 3D team really shines, no pun intended, as people come in the gallery. But our graphics and writing teams might also carry the weight with a two-dimensional show that I think is really striking as well. And then there are the exhibitions where all the teams come together, writing, graphics, 3D, media, all of us trying to collaborate, coordinate, and make something that we hope visitors find intriguing enough that it makes them pause and dig in. But if anything is really the secret sauce, I think it's the people. We're incredibly lucky at our museum that we have an in-house team. This is a good representation, although not quite all of us. Occasionally we get across the street into Central Park for a picnic. And I think it's the shorthand that we all develop over working years together, working in close proximity. So a writer has an idea, they run over to graphics to see, could it work like this? Or do you have a better idea? How could I tell this story? And when I think about how we're all working here, some days we're really just alone at our desks when you have to get the baby tyrannosaur just right, or when proofreading is the thing that you don't want any distractions from. But when I think back, really, it's mostly all of us working in collaboration with each other, trying to help each other, trying to point out the things that maybe you noticed and nobody else did, or laughing when we make a prototype that we have to acknowledge probably just actually isn't going to work right. But then sometimes, the models are looking pretty good. The graphics and writing are really starting to come together. Okay, we're going to reorganize this exhibit together one more time, and then that'll be it. Uh, oh, wow, if we could really get this infrasonic communication interactive for elephants working, it's going to be really cool. And those are the days when you start to feel happy. You take a break maybe for a, goofy hard hat selfie moment, rack up the good donuts for Brett's birthday, or get up on the roof to look at the eclipse, or, break out the all-important ukulele band when someone's retiring. So I think a lot of it is the relationships that we all develop, the shorthand, how we can work together, rely on our past experience. If the exhibitions that we've made have worked, I think it's largely because we all really care about them. We love working together. We do it every day, and we do it as best we can. Thanks so much. Happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Lauri. That was a great overview of what is an incredible amount of work in a very, very short amount of time. So we do have a number of questions here. Actually, the first thing that I would love to, or that, we'd like to ask you is, what exactly is the development time for a typical temporary exhibition?
Can I just say never as long as you'd hope? Uh, it varies. An exhibition like this, we'd really hope for 20 or 22 months. Sometimes we almost get 2 years. 2 years is the longest we ever get, and often it's faster than that.
Okay, great. And of course, I think we're not surprised at all that there are a lot of questions about evaluation. Do we use a standard evaluation? Do we use a typical or standard evaluation questions and format across all of the different kinds of evaluations that we do? How exactly do we do it? And then also, do we ever update things at the museum based on those evaluations?
Um, let's tackle the first part first. We don't tend to use standard questions. I think in part because while we sometimes bring in an outside evaluator, all of us know that there is a real cost to that. And so we've relied on our in-house team that largely works in our education department to help us develop tools. A couple people in exhibition take the lead, and then we really encourage as many people as we can who are making the exhibitions to get out and get on the floor with visitors because we learn so much. The standard things we do are timing and tracking. We always want to know how long are visitors spending on average, what's the range, and where are they going? Are there exhibits that are super popular? Are there exhibits that aren't attracting as much attention, and why might that be? But beyond that, we don't really always have the bandwidth to ask people everything we'd like. So we focus on the things that we think we either might want to remediate or we might want to pay forward into the next exhibition. So in Sharks, for example, we had that hands-off technology. We were really curious to understand how was that working? Is that something we'd want to do again? Um, and the big ideas, I think we always also try to ask. We certainly want to know what people are learning. Beyond that, sorry, Susan, help me remember what else there was.
Let me see here. There was one piece, do we change things based on evaluations at the museum before things go on the road? That was one piece of it, which you may have covered already. And then the other one was, do we have questionnaires for the visitors? And do the employees measure times for how long visitors spend in particular parts of the exhibition?
Yes, sometimes we might be curious if we have a digital interactive that's really popular. Are people waiting to use it? Is it working efficiently? We don't tend to evaluate how long people spend at every individual exhibit, just because that's a lot of manpower. We certainly are tracking where are they stopping and how long are they spending in the exhibit as a whole. And certainly we remediate. Sharks is a good example where some of those hands-off interactives were successful and others, yeah, we learned that, boy, a touchscreen is your best friend for certain kinds of interactions.
Great. So now we're going to move to everybody's favorite conversation sometimes or never, which is budget. And right now we're talking about budget timelines. And so one question is, how does the budgeting timeline for funding a new exhibition work in tandem with the process?
Mhm.
And then there's a little bit of a follow-up to that one as well. And it just says, is there a guideline that we use for allocation of the budget so that it can help inform how much goes to graphics, how much goes to technology, how much goes to research, how much goes to 3D?
Okay, I'll take the last part first. Essentially, we look at that as kind of slicing the pie, right? We have a budget amount and we in the exhibition are allocating that to our teams, and we don't cut the pie the same way every show. Some shows, media might play a bigger role. Some shows, 3D might really need a bigger piece. Certainly a show like Sharks, there was a lot of model making. We knew that model making would be a strength. So we do adjust that each time for the exhibition in question. Otherwise, how does the timeline work? The way we create permanent halls here is we have a proposal and we are waiting for funding before we hit the button, before we get a green light to go. Our temporary exhibitions work a little bit differently. We know that we're going to fund them. We will fund them internally as well as through donor funding. So we are not waiting to have all the funding in hand before we start. Um, it might be reassuring to do that, but we are often on a tight time frame. So we go and we know that one way or another, we're going to make our costs back.
Great, thank you. And just a little bit of a temporary versus the permanent exhibition. There's a question about how does our temporary exhibition development process differ from developing permanent exhibitions?
It doesn't differ too much. I mean, all those stages are the same stages. The difference is that for a permanent hall, we will have additional teams helping manage on the capital funding and the building side. You know, there might be really architectural envelope work. There might be outside consultants or experts that are coming in to do physical work. So we have other teams that are managing that part of the process while we're just the exhibition part. But otherwise, it's really pretty much the same process. It works no matter what you're doing. It works on a graphic panel show. It's just that some steps you can skip over if they're not relevant.
Great. We've got another question here, and it's about working with curators and scientists. And could you describe that process a little bit and how that's integrated into the development of an exhibition?
Sure. Well, I think Sharks was an example where we start off with science as part of that incubation process, and then we start every project with them. You know, some projects are really in the sweet spot for a curator. It's what they've done their whole lives. It's their absolute area of expertise. Other shows cut across a lot of different domains. So I'm looking, for example, let's see what we have here. Creatures of Light down at the bottom of the screen right now cuts across, you know, ichthyology, entomology, all sorts of different expertise. Um, one of the things that I think used to happen here is curators used to write the exhibition label copy. The museum changed that quite a while back, as we realized that the best way for us to work together is for curators to be able to provide their great expertise on the science. We'd like to think that in exhibition, we're the experts in how to communicate that science to the public. So they are looking really closely. We're meeting with them to get the ideas. We're writing, they're reviewing, we're changing, they're reviewing again. There's a huge amount of back and forth on the content, on the models, on the whole design of the show. And at the end of the day, we sit down with the curators with the final labels in paper form, and they're going to read every last thing one time and sign each panel. Then they're going out for fabrication, and we've all done it together.
Great. I think we have time for one more question. So we are going to make it a super interesting one, or this is going to be like, aha, you did this to me. Do we have we ever encountered any serious failure in the past years? And if so, what were the lessons learned? Or what would we consider to be something we're like, huh, that didn't work the way we expected to?
Oh, sure. You know, there always are things that don't work the way you expected. Um, you know, there are funny ones like as you're observing in the gallery, you'll see people pushing on something that's a rivet or a lock or something where you realize like, oh, they think that's interactive. We have to make that a little more subtle. There are shows that visitors swarm into in such great numbers that we realize, oh, wow, we really needed more stations for that. And then sometimes you can't predict the interactive that we thought would catch people's real interest and have them stay. They stay at a shorter amount of time. I think we've learned more recently to kind of build in photo ops and selfie moments. People come, they want photos. And, you know, if they post selfies on Instagram, like if you look at Unseen Oceans, people sitting in that submersible, that's marketing for all of us in museums, right? That they're putting that out as on their family Instagram post that they had so much fun and they wanted to show a photo for that. Um, I know that's a success, but I think in the past we just didn't really plan for that. So people's photos would be kind of random when we realized we could help them by planning that a little bit better. Um, Otherwise, you know, maybe I repress the memories of the things that really were epic fails, and we try to fix those before they get on the road so that the rest of you are never aware of them. But I don't mean to say that we get everything right. Every day, we're always trying something new. And you know how that is when you're trying new things. Sometimes it's a dream and sometimes it's a challenge.
That is so very true. Well, thank you so much, Lori. This has been great. And actually, if you could just go to the next slide real fast.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So I just want to tell everybody that, this is a webinar series, and I want to let you know that the next webinar is going to be taking place on April 25th at 1:30 p.m. as well. And we're going to be joined by Danny Ziegler, who's the Associate Director for the Gilder Center Education Programming, and he's going to talk a little bit about the work that we're doing with the Education Department here, focusing on learning lab spaces and visitor facilitation and how they're working with this in permanent temporary exhibitions and what we're looking to do in the future. You can go ahead and register for this right now. Isn't that convenient? If you just go to amnh.org/GBD. We are also going to be recording this. This webinar has also been recorded, and we will be sharing the link for this as well. So we would be always happy if you would share this with your colleagues. And if you have any questions about anything, you can always reach us through the Contact Us site if you don't have our information already at that same email below at amnh.org or at GBD. Again, Lauri, thank you so much for taking the time today. That was fantastic. And I want to say thank you to everybody for joining, and have a great weekend.
Thanks so much.